So welcome everyone. This is a design talk. I'm your guide, Chris Becker. I'll be going through a short lecture and then sharing some resources for diving into an activity. But today we're going to talk about using AI to improve UX scenarios, in a case for building and using generative AI, and we'll get going into it. So whatever. Short about this, I'll talk a little bit myself. We'll talk about storytelling and UX. We'll practice sketching a little bit using AI, and then we'll get into a FigJam activity. And then at the end, there'll be some questions in QA. So you're probably wondering, like, who am I? Well, hi, I am your host here. I am a senior user experience designer, educator. I have a master's degree from the Art Center College of Design, where I also teach, and I also am a mentor with Design Lab, and actually I'm currently working on a short course in usability and accessibility with Design Lab, which is going to be exciting. And I sort of love doing this stuff, love sort of teaching this in this space, and excited to sort of share some of these skills. My background is in graphic design, but my sort of role in being a UX user experience designer educator is really about sort of improving the designer's role in making products better. I've written a book. There's links and things in here, but I've written a book called Learning Human-Computer Action. I write on medium.com, and then I also mentor on the side, not only just with Design Lab, but also with ADP List as an outputs. So what we're going to talk about a little bit today in our lecture is using AI to improve UX scenarios. If you're not familiar with UX scenarios, we'll sort of cover them a little bit, but this sort of stems from an article that I wrote about sort of like user experience designers and designers as a whole, like having to be good at telling stories and like being what they know as a raconteur. And most of what we end up doing is sort of articulating in our products and services how users accomplish stuff, and that requires understanding them deeply to their core, but then also being able to tell better stories about what their goals are and what are the scenarios that they can accomplish those things in. Now, it's always good to know, and I always sort of go to the quote bank of guys like Steve Jobs, but like this is a good one. You know, the most powerful person in the world is a storyteller. The storyteller has a vision, sets values and agenda, and the entire generation is that to come. Now, designers are particularly able to sort of weave stories and do this, and I love Steve Wozniak's Apple belt in this 1970s photo. It's just sort of there. Now, the role of storytelling is sort of key in what we do, and I'm considering having you guys watch this, but I don't think we'll waste the time of this. But if any of you are not familiar with Kurt Vonnegut, which is who's pictured in this video, he tells an incredible lecture on the shapes of stories, and this is a YouTube video that I recommend sort of watching on your own time. But fundamentally, how we talk about the way at which a process works or a visual of the outputs, stories have a shape, and our role in making products and services is deeply connected to understanding the story that we're impacting our users with through our solutions, right? Whether that's helping them connect with people, or helping them, get groceries because they can't do things, or whatever that service is. It's literally countless, but we can also map and understand how that story happens over time. And the time component of what we sort of understand is there. He's obviously a master of his craft, or was a master of his craft in storytelling, and it's relevant for what we design and create today. If any of you are not familiar with Paul Lasso's design funnel, these things of like the power of a simple graphic. But the role of the design process plays in sort of making and understanding from a starting point through to the steps of empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test, which is the design thinking sort of process, allows you to then sort of expand on and elaborate on your ideas, and then focus them or funnel them into tangible objects that people hold in their hand, or that solve the problem. And all these are sort of, there's a lot of methodologies and process that we go through, but at its core, you start sort of at the lowest fidelity, right? Sketches, hand drawing, user scenarios, etc. And then that allows you to move forward into sort of extending that. So what we'll extend here is this opportunity of a question. So I'm going to ask a question here, and maybe I'll jump back into the interface just to see if anybody can respond. So who here likes to draw, doodle, sketch, render, conceptualize, make these little like beep bop boop graphics? And I'm going to jump back into our to see this. Marty says nope. We got a doodler there. Jackie, okay, good. Doodler, raise your hand. Good, okay. There's so yes, is it to some extent of what you do. If you don't, that's fine. At some level of making a products, it's all it's all related to drawing in some relations. Whether you're using a pencil or you're actually pushing pixels and making, or even doing code, right? It visualizes or renders itself in the world. Similarly, who likes to write or do stories? And it's always good to have a Simpsons quote: 1,000 monkeys making it 1,000 typewriters. And I'll come back in here to see if anybody really likes writing. Yep. Okay. Stories. But okay, maybe not stories, but you write a lot of other things, right? Writing is sort of essential for what we build, and you have to describe what you're making. Sometimes you have to write technical documentation. Some of those things are part of what we do as well. So good. Now, writing, drawing, and writing, they go hand in hand. And the role at which we sort of understand and can conceptualize our world is that we want to use tools that speed us up. And I'm a huge advocate for working outside of the computer to some extent, whether it's a paper and pencil, and these things are particularly fast thinking tools. And I now have young children, and we're sort of teaching them to draw, to write, to recognize that they can write letters. But it's at its core a sort of fundamental communication opportunity. And if you can get really fast at it, you can do really interesting things. And one of those things that we can do is conceptualize ideas or think about the future. And storytelling starts with that, right? Whether it's writing what you need to do, or drawing out what that sort of looks like, or visualizing that in some way, helps us communicate. And what it's really capable of is communicating a huge wide range of emotional qualities. And part of being good at user experience design and design generally is having empathy for your users. If you don't know how your product makes them feel, how are you going to improve them, right? Or if it really pisses them off at some point, you need to recognize that, because that's deeply connected to what we're solving. And one of the ways to do that is by using a process known as a UX scenario. Let me go back into here and see, has anybody ever produced one of these or seen a UX scenario before? Derek's typing. Yeah, sure. Maybe by another name. Like, this isn't like a radical idea. It's not like you're doing it. Maybe, yeah. Storyboarding is connected to this as well. Sure. Storyboarding. It's all sort of a spectrum. This particular relationship, known as a UX scenario, is a sort of boiled down set of steps, right? That you have a user. This could have been defined through research and a user persona, or just like someone who you're considering designing for. And then the idea of establishing what their goal is, either with your technology or with your service or with their life or whatever that is. And then that roots back into a scenario. And what we design in any interface is related to sequence, right? The user needs to log in to accomplish being part of the service, or they need to order a piece of food or whatever that. There's like, it's literally, it's somewhat infinite. But the more we can sort of translate or understand the goals of our users and who they are, we can then bake in and establish authentic scenarios or think about them in unique ways. And that also allows us to sort of articulate and understand what are some of the scenarios or risks. So here's an example of a user scenario, and I've sort of walked through the sort of steps. Like first, you define like who the person is. Let's say we have Craig. He's 34. He's a front-end developer from Los Angeles. He likes to travel and he likes photography and some food. And his goals are finding some of the best restaurants where he visits, where he can go in a new city. Because he doesn't really trust Yelp reviewers, which is a whole other set of questions about why that trust doesn't exist. But by knowing that he wants to find the best local restaurants, Craig is now visiting Miami and he wants to avoid any tourist traps and he wants to visit some local restaurants. And so he clicks into this new foodie app, which finds authentic local Cuban food in Miami, and he discovers a local place where he's happy to order a Cuban sandwich. Okay, like potentially a scenario all made up. Craig is not a real person necessarily, but Craig could very well be real. There likely is somebody traveling to Miami to go eat a Cuban sandwich because I hear that they are quite good in Miami. But the relationship here is that allows Craig to sort of understand that he wants to experience culture, he wants to not waste his time, and he wants to eat some good food. And now he has some phases that lead to success. Somewhat an oversimplification, but the scenario is sort of capable of aligning quickly to a user's goals. And we can then articulate these things pretty quickly, right? We can design and create one of these. In our exercise workshop today, we'll sort of dive in and start creating some of these for ourselves. And part of what we're going to do with that baseline of a user-generated user scenario is we can then lean on or apply our thinking about a person through a generative AI. And there's lots of generative AI out there. The space has moved pretty quickly, which is sort of fascinating. And we will be leaning on Visual Electric. There's others like Dolly and Midjourney. Those things get a little bit more complicated, and Visual Electric actually has some free stuff that you guys can experiment with, which is why we'll do that in the first place. But essentially, these AI models and MML sort of can take input from end users, i.e. a drawing and some good writing, and then it can spit out potentially more information or more context that would be hard to do with just one or the other, whether it's just drawing or just writing. But if you add them together, they can then sort of help you move forward with what that story visualizes itself as, or helps you get to where you need to go. And some of it is a little bit fun as well. So hopefully you'll see that in our exercises where you could go in and do it. So I'm going to jump out and send the design lab exercise. So let me share this. Anyone with the output can edit. Okay, copy link. And I think I can start this as, okay. Let's go back here. Okay, so what I want everyone to do, if you can jump into this file, let me know if you have access. And some of you will start jumping in here. Great. Okay, so what I want everyone to do is we are going to be writing, we're going to take the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes to actually write out our own thing. So grab this whole section and just copy it for yourself. Does that make sense? So everyone just grab one, copy it, drag it to a space that isn't sort of in there, and replace the title of the section. I see that someone down here. Just update your title with your name and your location. Amanda, I see you sort of doing that. Just update the title with your name and where you live. You can double click that to do that. Boop, boop, boop. Good. Yeah, I realize everyone's trying to copy maybe on the same file. Go grab somebody else's if you're all trying to do it at once. And I'm going to take a screenshot here just so we are capturing this. Good, 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 good. Oh yeah, I mean, change it. Yeah, modify your background color. This is all just a template here for you to sort of lean on and use. I know one in LA, good. Derek in Los Angeles, awesome. Alyssa, Marty, sounds good. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set a 10-minute timer, and what I want us all to do is I want you to just go create a user scenario. Whether it's a product that you're working on in your job, or you just want to make something up, or you just looking to practice this. It really doesn't matter, but it should associate itself under a like technical, like they need to use an application or they need to go to a web page or something that's digital, it, to accomplish their goal. And what the role is of this is start with number one, defining who your person is, then skip over to unit the goals, and I sort of show that here. Skip to like wants to find the best restaurants, and then go back in once you know what the goal is and write out a scenario that is helping your defined user accomplish your scenario. Is everybody clear there? And you can like give me a reaction. Do you guys ever use the reactions? Like, you'd be like, fire, yay. If you need help, you can also come over here and at me. But like, if you're ready, we'll get going. So I'm gonna put on some ambient tunes, maybe some lo-fi hip hop, and I'm gonna give us 10 minutes, and I want us all to go complete a quick scenario. Marty. I'm gonna do one myself, just to, and I'm just gonna copy what I have. Chris traveling to Miami. Is this not playing? Oh, there he goes. I wonder, if you guys can hear this or not, but it's okay. If you can't hear the music, you can also turn music in and on your own side, but we'll manage that. Okay. The locals go to. Miami. A local favorite. Okay. while you guys are all doing this, again, start with your user. Write out a little bit of what the goal is. Okay, find a new doctor. Great. Derek, you're over here. Find a new doctor. Now write a scenario which sort of aligns to Randall doing that task, right? This is going to be good. I have one here that I was sort of talking about Craig traveling to Miami to eat a Cuban sandwich. And he uses a food app to do that. Okay, we're halfway. You guys don't worry about some of that, but I'm gonna stop the music as I. Okay. Good. Fitness. Yep. Samaria, welcome. Sid's over here. Good, Alyssa. Jack Fox. You don't need, if you just have one goal, that's fine. You don't need multiple. There's just room for multiple in there. So Jackie, maybe complete a simple goal, right? If it's grocery shopping, streamlining groceries, great. Just define the goal really sort of succinctly. Great. There you go. Randall. I'm gonna come over here. Good. Food related. Good, Brittany. Okay. Ooh, future. Nice. Communicate. Okay. Fun. Fun. I'm excited to see what happens with that one. Fiona is planning a wedding. All right, good. Okay, I'm gonna stop the music for the last 2 minutes. Everybody getting pretty close? Does anybody need some more time? Starting to do some drawing in there. We'll wait a second. Okay, so one of the things you can also do, how many of you ever used ChatGPT? If you haven't, I'm just going to show you that like you can also go in here and you can say like, can you help me improve this scenario. And then you add your scenario in here. I'm going to copy this and paste it again. And ChatGPT can sometimes be helpful in this. Certainly, ChatGPT will give you a lot, but here, like, Craig is an avid traveler and is headed to Miami with a mission to immerse himself in the city of authentic cuisine. Like, this gets just a little bit more specific. Obviously, they gave me a lot, but you know, maybe I want more of this. So I'm just going to copy that as an extended sample, and you do like version 2, v2 from ChatGPT. Okay, now one of the roles at which, like, the speed at which you can sort of get a scenario started and then improve it through an AI is helpful, right? Maybe extends this thing that they've done, and it sort of will build on top of your existing scenario place. And let's just go review these really quickly. I'm just going to come down over here to Jackie. Actually, there's one over here. Look, raise your hand, or like, anybody interested in me reviewing this? And I can stop this. Does anybody need any more time? They sort of get a scenario in their role. Amanda, you look like you've got one. I'm going to read yours because it's sort of bonkers, and I sort of love it that it moves so far out in the future. Like, in the year 2023, AI will help us speak to zoo animals or something. Yeah. Oh, and you originally created it with the ChatGPT. Awesome. See, helpful. Okay, so now that we have some personas, you guys can roam around a little bit and read through some people's personas. I think everyone's sort of gotten the point of goals, a small scenario that's associated under a person that wants to do something, whether it's planning a wedding for a photographer. There was one over here that had to do with health, losing weight, et cetera. So good. And if you have the second version with the help of ChatGPT, that's really helpful. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to jump into what I want to do is open up Visual Electric. I've already started on this, as you can see. But Visual Electric, you'll get a brand new canvas, and what you can do is you can draw a sample, a short little thing using the pen tool. And I even saw somebody in FigJam starting to do that. It was over here. Like, I don't know if you can copy these things into chat into Visual Electric, but what we'll do is we'll spend the next 10 minutes, maybe even less, in Visual Electric. Do a short little drawing of your outputs, and then type into this chat thing to have it render an item for you. So my component was a man eating a Cuban sandwich in the vibrant city of Miami Art Deco scene under a neon sky, and it sort of produced these weird things. Some of them are like not so good with their mouth. Their hands are all mangled. I think this one, like, look, his hands are all mangled. It's got too many fingers. But this might be Craig. Who knows? But from a weird sketch that I would call not very good, it helps. Is this making sense? Anybody have questions here? No. Oh, and Marty, it's a little harder to do raising a hand here, but you can raise your hand in our FigJam file if you had a question. And you can comment at me, like, hey, at Chris, if you had a question, like, go answer this. But what we're going to do here, as I was saying, is go into Visual Electric. You'll get a fresh canvas, and I want you to do a quick little drawing of your scenario. If you need to bring in your scenario from FigJam, that's fine. I sort of work on these side by side, but you sort of know like, okay, you know, it's Randall using a website and he's frustrated about what he does. Okay, like about finding a new doctor or whatever that is. Or even over here, there was the one about a future. So do a quick little drawing about an avid animal enthusiast who wants to communicate with animals with their visit at the zoo. And that in Visual Electric, whatever, a person standing in front of a cage, chatting with a tiger or a snake or whatever you choose. And then once you get your quick little drawing done, you can apply a little view and it'll render an image for you. Does this make sense? It's hard because I can't see anyone who says no. Okay. So we'll get started here. I may do another one as we're doing this, just so you guys get a sense of what this is, and it may render a different view. And I'm going to do Craig using his phone to find a Cuban sandwich, not eat a Cuban sandwich. So this is sort of the end goal. He's already found his Cuban sandwich to eat, and I'm going to do the version of him having to find a Cuban sandwich. So you guys can see how they do that. Yeah, we'll do this for the next sort of 10 minutes, as I said. So it's 10:36. You know, I'll check back in a second. But if you have questions, I think you can come offline and raise your hand, and I can get to you. I believe you can create an account in Visual Electric in any way, but I don't run Visual Electric. That would be weird if they only allowed people with Gmail to use it. And you don't have to use Visual Electric is what we'll sort of be experimenting with. So I'm going to get started here. I'll come back in here and see if there's any questions. But if you go back to your outputs when you're creating a new canvas, you should be able to click a sketch here at the top and render that. So just know that's the case. And I'm going to come back into mine with the man. And I had done another one earlier about a wheelchaired man. So, but I'm going to do Craig looking on his phone. So up here, you grab a brush. You can make it as much as you want. I usually do the color hardness at 100. Again, these things don't have to be, that's the value of some of this, is like your sketch doesn't have to be amazing. It can be a stick figure if it needs to be. So I can even sort of show you like a really quick way to render Craig. So here's Craig holding a phone. And he's in a city. And he is hungry. I put him in a fedora because he's in Miami. Okay. And he wants food. And you can delete images if you want, whatever. This is going to be pretty fast. Okay. So now I'm going to come and I'm going to select this guy. I'm just going to move him over here so it doesn't get mixed up in the other renders that I've done. But here's him looking in Miami for food. So a 34-year-old man is using his phone in Miami to find a Cuban sandwich, a Cuban restaurant sandwich food truck for lunch. Okay, so I've got this little sketch. I'm going to ask it to render some outputs, and I'm going to hit go. Let's see, it should be pretty quick. Let's see if it gets what it produces for us. Okay. Didn't get the hat, but I didn't tell it that he was supposed to be wearing a fedora hat, but that's okay. So as you can see, this renders together pretty quickly off my sketch. And what I want us to do is then take a screenshot of your visual electric sketch and your renders. I'm gonna just do it now. Oh, okay, it just wrapped up. And come back into our FigJam and place that image in your version. And I'm gonna do this. Chris Becker. Indy, LA. Okay. If you go to my screenshots, where's that? Okay. Here's my screenshot of that weird thing. Place it in here. I'm gonna go grab my other one as well because I have it and it rendered out this guy eating a sandwich. I'm gonna copy that one into FigJam as well. Okay, go. I don't want to rush you guys, but once you get an image, come drag that over here. You can make your thing big enough to encompass that. Ooh. Oh, he's holding it far away. Did he get the mustache? Didn't get the mustache. I see him. Why are all these plants around him? Weird. He's so grumpy. All right. Derek, you did that. I'm curious what's going to come up over here. Oh, and look, it rendered. You rendered one that was in a cartoon. Is that right? So that's another thing that's sort of fascinating about visual electric is that it doesn't have to just be photography. You could make it about illustration or crafts or fine art, or usually it's like default is photography. But if you also wanted to render it out at like I don't know, marker render or a storyboard, like it can take on different realities. So here, maybe let's try and render this out as a storyboard as well. Now, as this sort of starts to render, I'm going to come back into FigJam to see how people started doing that. I only went to this because I thought it was like, hey, cool. Yeah, I don't know, or maybe you drew that, but I imagine not. But like, here's a weird lady holding a phone. her teeth are too white. There's like this ways in which you sort of know these things are there. Like this, like photo is a little bit, the depth of field is a little strange. But go do a couple, right? Okay, I got my phone. Let's see if Hannah gets pulled in here. I think this one is really weird. Like he's sitting in a room with a bunch of trees and like wood. So weird. Good. Okay, look, like rendered you know, Samantha riding her bike dangerously with a huge ass phone. Yeah, like you can usually tell like AI at first because they like give too many fingers and stuff isn't there, but you know, from a level of like a couple of minutes into a story and rendering something that sort of represents or sees that thing in this space is sort of fascinating. And the goal at some level is to try and give visuals to the level of authenticity. And there's others outside of Visual Electric that can do this for us, but it is sort of fascinating. Here, let me go back to my Visual Electric to see how it rendered this. Okay, cool. Copy back into FigJam and I'm gonna put them where I got them. Oh, am I taking screenshots? I thought I would copy it, but I have to go take a screenshot, which is okay. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. So with the last few minutes, okay, everyone's getting something rendered here. Oh, that guy's cooking. Look, from this like kind of weird sketch, this guy gets to camp and cook, and this guy gets to cook in the kitchen, and this guy is doing some things, and it's all related to market for a skillet on his camping trips or something. Good. Roam around, leave some comments on other people's stuff. You can leave some reactions like here. I don't know why this guy has so many instruments floating around him. It's weird. There is a sort of fun and strange thing that I also find sort of comforting because it lets me know that AI built it versus like this guy's actual name or whatever. So, but we can talk about that. Yeah, practice a few of these things. Obviously, we can see a few executions of like how this looks like. I thought maybe this one would be a little different because it was 2035. I don't know if you told it 20, 30, 30, 35, but it's not doing, like, it's even choosing an older model phone and some stuff like that, which you find sort of fascinating. But you can sort of uniquely tweak the language and the description of those things to sort of get closer to what you want. And that's and we did this in 10 minutes, right? The 20 minutes altogether, to sort of align this. Let me go back to my lecture, and we'll sort of wrap this up. So hopefully what you're seeing is that UX scenarios are a pretty quick way in which to sort of think about users hopefully in an authentic way. Obviously, the more research that you can do to inform your user research of those scenarios, the better. Obviously, it's just like making stuff up quickly can be a recipe for outputs, but the role that design can play in this is that we get to learn from what it makes. And if you're not familiar with John Dewey, he has one of my favorite quotes, which is, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on that experience. So part of seeing how the computer renders what you asked it to from a sketch and a description helps us then formulate that and reflect on, is it what we want it to be, right? Is this addressing what we need? And so what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen and come back in here, and we can do a short Q&A. If you have questions, please place them in the chat, and then I'll also be sort of aligning or filling out this larger, just whatever. Add your stuff to your UX scenarios. But if you have questions, we now have a time to sort of do that. You can type in the outputs. Oh, Derek, you said it got weirder after you added the persona part. Yeah, the one of the things about working with any AI is that it only is really a reflection of stuff that lives out in the world. So you have to, if you want it to be specific, you have to give it specific information, right? Like, you can't just say, like, render me a man in an office, because it doesn't, like, that is really generic. But if you say, render me, John, who is 35 and wears black pants, and like, the more like input and the better input you give it, the better output it results in. And even sort of leaning on multiple views of that. Like, some of you took your sentence and put it into ChatGPT, which helps refine that thing, and then use that ChatGPT story into Visual Electric or DALL-E or any of these others that are there. And that actually creates potentially your opportunity to refine that. Well, you say that there's no room for iterations, but you can make a new drawing and you can ask it to render a different state, like I did with, I had a guy eating a sandwich as the goal, but then I wanted to get like them on the phone. Like, the iterations occur in the refinement, right? And where AI and these things are sort of fascinating is that they are faster at refining some of your initial points of view, and they allow you to render at a certain pace. Like, if we didn't have DALL-E, like, many of you would still make or didn't have Visual Electric, many of you would still not be able to render that as a storyboard, or you would still be using a pencil sketch or a stick figure. Not that those are bad, they still communicate, and they are a starting place, but it fundamentally can be refined, and you have to sort of practice with it, right? Which is sort of fascinating about that. The design process can be aligned with that of AI and using it. Yeah, and again, we were practicing with this quickly. If you spend a lot of time using these things to sort of render at a high rate of your execution, you'll get better at it. You should have. There's like, those that know how to use ChatGPT well, like, learn how to prompt ChatGPT. Like, they are changing the way they ask questions to get the answers that they want from the computer. It's this weird sort of like, I didn't know, not that it's like a Turing test, but we are designers and artists, humans are able to modify our existence and how we ask questions to get the answers that we're looking for. But we still have to, it's still moderated by the end user, right? It renders something for us, and then we get to choose whether that's viable or useful, or their hands messed up or whatever that is. But it's still sort of like in a really short amount of time, that allows for that exploration to happen potentially faster. And with teams, whatever, all of us together, like we just produced a number of scenarios that we wouldn't have been able to sort of get to otherwise, and have visuals to maybe represent those things. Now we could have a debate over how effective or authentic that AI's execution of that is. Absolutely. And don't hide it. Don't make it seem like you did this, right? It's like I made this rendering, like I drew this. No, like Visual Electric made this for me for speed purposes, right? Or to do that. But there's lots of people in their process that don't even have that. So just be mindful of that. Any other questions? I'm sort of scrolling back through here. Ooh, even Facebook has a toggle. Like one of the, again, this space has moved pretty fast. As designers, I think it is incumbent on us to sort of lean on these tools or practice with them. And if they don't work, ditch them. You know what I mean? Like, have I used this in my ability to like produce a UX scenario for a client? Like, no, but I use it with students like yourself because it's really a good way to experiment with it, right? Experimenting with these tools is fundamental to us finding whether they are helpful or hurtful for our craft as a whole. This is not an argument for doing that, but there is this opportunity to say, like, by the craft is in the making of things, right? You have to use these things to speed, and if it speeds you up, awesome. If it's like, if you're spending more time writing a prompt to get the answer you want, and you could have just drawn it yourself, go draw it yourself. Like, now it's owned by you, and it's not some weird AI generated thing. But for most of us, it's this opportunity to say, like, I don't have that rendering skill. It could do that. I mean, I went to art school, and I don't want to spend all my time rendering a scenario that I'm just trying to think through, or see if that's authentic. So the reality of using this stuff with clients is also about time and space, right? Like you sort of have to bridge that gap with, do they want to use that? In my last role at Better, we used AI with our clients a lot because they wanted to get stuff out the door with a high quality of outputs fast, right? And AI can be used for all sorts of rendering purposes, including things like video background assets and whatever. We used AI generated images for decks and for outputs that were really, because the client didn't want to spend money on some of that stuff, but we could do it and make it look quality through these tools. And the clients were highly aware of that. Some of that because we brought them in to show them how we use those tools to speed them up, but also because they are also sort of interested in what that can do for them as well, right? If it's helpful for us, it's very likely helpful for them as well. Now, I'm always an advocate in that of like, these tools are incredibly powerful, and you need to be able to show them how to use them effectively. Again, in 20 minutes of an exercise, that may have not been the outcome. So, but just be mindful that again, they're tools, just like Figma or any of the other things. Like, people are like, oh, do you feel comfortable giving your Figma access to your clients? And I'm like, well, in some scenarios, sure. In others, no, they just get view access. They're not allowed to tinker with the stuff. They're not allowed to build. They're not allowed to create. That's what they hired us to do. They can see it and they can be visualized into it, but they're not part of the sort of like pushing of pixels or moving of components or whatever that is, because that becomes more dangerous. But it's a good question. We are at time. I'm willing to stay a little bit longer, but if you have any other questions or you're there to do that, please, yeah, connect with me, share your outputs. I think this rendering of our FigJam is here. It's open for you guys to use and outputs, and hopefully this was fun. It was fun for me. I'm like, you know, just sort of like tickled by some of the weird renders that came out of this that I would never really be able to produce. And that's sort of what whatever, that's my home, like my fun little, like, look at what this weird rendering was. Look at how AI sped this exercise up. So yeah, and connect with me online. I'm glad this was sort of helpful. All right. Goodbye, everyone.